This is Create the Next from ProCFO Partners, where every week we explore strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help today's businesses put their financial picture in context.
Welcome back to Create the Next. I'm Chris Bintliff. Today is another exciting and interesting day. I always love when we get to do what we call client stories, which are literally stories between some of our CFOs and the people that they spend so much time and energy, the organizations that they spend so much of their expertise with. Kathleen Reynolds is with us. It's been a minute since I've spent time with Kathleen, so I'm very excited, Kathleen, to sort of explore this relationship with you and the Lavitt Group. Lavitt Group is a really interesting organization. I'm going to let you guys kind of dig into it, but it's a family business, multi-generational. I think that's interesting. There's a lot of dynamics. Two brothers are kind of in lead, and I think that's really interesting. So, Kathleen, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'm gonna be a listener, a part of our audience, and enjoy your conversation. And I'm sure I'll come back later with some thoughts.
Great. Well, thanks, Chris. Hi, Keith. Hi, Jason.
Good morning.
Hello. Yes.
Why did you choose to work with ProCFO Partners in the first place?
I'll take that one. So, a little bit of background. In August of 2023, Jason and I made the decision to eliminate the president and COO position in the company. And the two of us stepped more deeply back into the day-to-day management of the business ourselves. What we didn't plan for at that time was a few months later, we had an unexpected vacancy in our CFO position. So it was a little bit of a double whammy for us at the time because our former president and COO had brought strong financial management to the table. So we had somewhat of a vacuum in terms of financial leadership in the company, which brought us to our search for a part-time CFO. And what we were looking for was a short-term solution that would provide stability and expertise while we conducted our search for a full-time CFO. So that's sort of where our heads were at the time and what led us to look for a fractional CFO. And then I think your question maybe specifically was about ProCFO. Is that right?
Yeah, because I imagine you were considering other options, right? And what would be the right way to go, either back to a full-time or start off with part-time. And then, so I'm interested in the thought process there too.
Yeah, well, we were fortunate. Jason and I both have pretty strong networks of peers that own businesses that we went to for advice and direction when we were in that moment where we were looking for a fractional part-time CFO. And we got a lot of recommendations. Some people recommended individuals that they thought could fill the role for us. And then there were organizations like ProCFO that were recommended to us. And one of the things that became clear to us when Jason and I would huddle on the topic is that ProCFO was coming up again and again in our conversations with different people that we were going to for advice. So we eventually conducted a series of interviews with you, Kathleen, and also several other candidates outside of ProCFO. And it became clear to us that ProCFO, the organization, and Kathleen, you, the individual, really stood out above the rest, not only in what you could bring to the company in terms of expertise, but also in terms of culture fit. And so I don't know if I'm fully answering your question, but that's how we ended up with ProCFO and you.
To your point about, full-time versus part-time, going to hire someone, we originally had planned for this to be an interim type of arrangement where, while we conducted a search for a permanent replacement for our outgoing CFO, that you could step in and work with us. And, it's worked out so well that we've abandoned those plans. And, you're, hopefully going to be a part of our team for a while, for as long as you'll have us.
But I want to go back to the point that you guys both raised about culture, because I actually think your Lavitt Group has a really strong corporate culture. And I've found in my experience that it is not always, you don't always find that. And you don't find it sort of embedded as strongly as you guys have done with your company. And I think that is a very strong sort of advantage that you have really across all your divisions, and the fact that folks really buy into it and live it. and you make it a part of our senior management meetings. Let's go through what what the daily Lavitt Group way is. Yes.
Fundamental of the week. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. The of the week, and go through it, and then make sure that we all have some story we can tell about it. Where have we actually, either experienced it from someone else or lived it ourselves, lived whatever, our weekly part of the Lavitt Group way is, and then explain it to each other. So I really like that you do that, and that it's a strong part of the company. And I do think it goes a long way with folks feeling, very collaborative with each other, and that we're all kind of in it together. And that's, it's not something that I've found a lot across companies that I've worked with. So how did that start, and why did you kind of embed it so strongly? What urged you to do that?
So, culture has always been an important part of our company, going back to, 1946 when our Poppy, founded the company. Back then, we have in our archives, we have copies of the original catalogs in the company. And, the very first page in the very first catalog was about how we treat our customers and how our company would resolve disputes and do the right thing, and just kind of how we conduct ourselves. And that stayed true throughout, the 3 generations of leadership. And over the years, our motto has changed a few times. We had a few different ways to describe our culture. The most recent version we have, as you said, is I think a particularly powerful one. It's where we have what we call the Lavitt Way, and it's 26 behavioral fundamentals. And we have a fundamental of the week. We run through it twice a year. And basically, it describes the type of company we strive to be. And it talks about doing the right thing. It talks about collaboration. It talks about problem solving. It talks about having fun. It talks about a lot of different things that are important and vital, we think, to the culture and the operation of the organization. And yes, when anybody starts with the company, in their first week, they meet with either Keith and I, and we talk deeply about this. And then each week we have a fundamental of the week in which we have an essay that goes out. It gets involved in company meetings when we talk about it at the top of the meeting, just to reinforce it. It gives us a shared language to use for situations, for how to get better, how to be better, and how to solve problems in our everyday lives. And so it's been a real driving force of the company over our 78 years now. So it's, we look for it to continue to be going forward.
We've been fortunate to have a lot of long-term colleagues in the company, 10 years, 20 years, 30, 40. We had one that was 50, but he did ultimately retire. But it's been great because the culture sort of lives on and takes on a life of its own, through that longevity in the company. I just want to add one thing also, that one of the things we were thinking about when we brought in a part-time CFO was that it would be difficult for that person to really become part of the culture of the company, because we didn't really know what to expect. But in our head, it was, we were bringing in more of an outsider than someone that was embedded, in the company. And we're extremely pleased that we could not have been more wrong. Kathleen, you're really just part of the fabric of the company now. And it's whether managing your colleagues or, working with our service providers outside the company, taking your team out for dinner, answering the call when you're not, on the clock, whatever it is, you're every bit as much engaged in the business and accepted as everyone else in the company. So
I go back to the fundamentals, because I think if these fundamentals weren't shared and actually lived by the employees, it would be a very different experience. And I've seen it, right, at other companies where you don't sort of have those binding virtues, if you want to call it that, right, that we all kind of work towards. But it does kind of bring us together, right? Like, this is how you should handle this type of situation, or this is how we work. It may not be the fastest way or the whatever, but this is the right way. I like that we embed that so strongly.
Yeah. And we also use it, to decide what suppliers we'd like to do business with. We want people that, that can comport with these fundamentals. Yeah. We use it very strongly in hiring, what kind of people we want in our company. And we also use it for customers. Are there customers we're not going to do business with because, we don't think they're going to live by this. And so, it's really become an important part of what we do and who we are.
You did talk about, you originally thought part-time CFO or interim and versus, a full-time. What, I guess, surprised you about having a part-time CFO and kind of changed your mind about going in that direction and seeing that it can work?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. Well, first of all, just the culture piece and the extent to which you're part of the organization as opposed to sort of something that's diving in periodically from outside the organization. And then I would say that the relationship is just, it works very smoothly. It's not, we of course we have an engagement that defines the terms of our engagement, but it's not like that engagement sets a box around, how we work with each other. So we've been able to, flex the engagement over time. So we've taken the amount of time we're working together based on the needs of the company, and that might be more or less at different times. So we've been able to flex like that. And even beyond flexing the engagement, there are just times where there are more needs or, maybe fewer needs. And you've adjusted your own, work schedule to fit those needs. So it seemed like it might be more, to me going in, the expectations may be more of a sterile, structured relationship, but it seems very natural. So that's been a great plus for us. But I'd ask you a question, because you're working with us and other clients, and I wonder how you sort of flex between your different clients, because it seems like you're always there for us when we need you. And maybe we're just special. I don't know. But I'm assuming you do that for your other clients as well. So how do you manage that?
Well, the carbonara has a lot to do with it, but I try to just be as communicative as possible. It's not that I never miss anything. So occasionally something will fall through the cracks, but I do try to communicate and say, I'm available this time, that time, or sorry, I can't make that meeting. Can we reschedule? I try to be on top of my calendar. I'd say that's kind of the most biggest challenge that I have, is just trying to stay on top of my calendar with everybody, because I'm trying to be there, as you describe it, there for everyone, and make sure that I'm accomplishing what I need to accomplish with each client. So, well,
you do it well.
Thank you.
and I think another reason why, just to go back to your question, that we are really enjoying this engagement and relationship is that ordinarily for a full-time CFO, we would not be able to afford someone with your level of expertise and experience. And to be able to have that, even on a part-time basis, although we are a little greedy with your time sometimes, to be able to have that access to that level of knowledge and experience is very, very valuable. And we appreciate having that.
Oh, thank you. Well, again, I'm really enjoying working with you guys, and I'm really happy that I've been able to, I think, kind of hit the ground running with a number of projects. And again, going back to the fundamentals, I think the fact that you have also given me latitude to take the ball, right, and run with it helps quite a bit, because sometimes that's a challenge when working with different clients. Different clients are used to a certain level of right ownership over certain functions and things like that. And it can be, it can take a little bit more time for me to earn that trust. So it's been nice for me too, to work with a team who, and you guys as brothers too, you both have that openness to allowing, me to take the lead as necessary on different things. So it's great to work with a team like that, who's open to that. So another question that I'm curious about is, what is, I guess, one of your favorite measures of success or initiatives or anything that I've worked on and helped you with? What is one of your favorites that kind of stands out for you?
I think in terms of initiatives, when I think about Kathleen, I think she gets out of bed in the morning and goes in front of the mirror and just repeats the word automate to herself, because that's what she wants to do, is automate. But in terms of what's been successful, there are a number of things, but if I had to talk about one thing, with you working in the company, it's been the new processes and systems that are in place and continue to be put in place in terms of streamlining and getting more efficient. And a lot of that is is automation, right? So it's, our automated AP system, which we're using now, and the automated, expense management and employee expense reports and report and reimbursement system, which is, going live, this week or next week, I guess. There's sales tax automation on tap behind that. So I think there's been a huge success in streamlining and improving the accuracy of what we're doing through automation. And one thing I'll say is not only, do I think you wake up thinking about automate every day, but a big value of having a fractional CFO that's part of an organization like ProCFO is when we're out looking for a new product or a new service provider or what it may be, you often have existing relationships that you go right to, or you often go to your team at ProCFO and ping them for their advice and their perspective. And that's, I think, helped us get further faster with the automation and the changes that we made.
What else, I guess, kind of surprised you about that you didn't expect going into this with ProCFO?
And I just alluded to another one, which is, the power of the organization behind you. So, we were envisioning we're bringing in Kathleen. She's, a fractional CFO, and we get Kathleen, but it's really much more than that. And, another example to that would be, or very early on, when Kathleen was first starting with us, we were doing some strategy work with the senior leadership team. And Kathleen recommended that Jason and I talked to Ryan Walter, who's the managing director of ProCFO, about our process and see if he had any advice or tools for us as we went through the strategy planning. And Ryan immediately volunteered to come out to Long Island, spend the day with us, and lead a management strategy session with our management team or our senior leadership group team, which he did. And it went very well. And it was, it was not something that we ever anticipated being part of the value of our relationship, but there it was, surprising us with another sort of piece of the puzzle. So, we've had a lot of happy surprises.
Would you recommend ProCFO partners to others in your network? And if so, how would you describe it? What would you say?
Well, I
have recommended ProCFO to some folks in my network group, and we've covered a lot of it, but to me it was just the seamlessness of it. It was just, we met with a few different people, and I think Keith said ProCFO, they heard about you guys more than the others, and you stood out from a personality perspective. But I think that you just joined us, and it was very seamless, and you came in and you jumped right in. There was no wasted time. There wasn't a whole lot of, getting to know you phase. It was just, all right, numbers are numbers. Let's get in there. Let's start digging, and we'll figure it out as we go. And that's exactly what we needed. Like Keith said, we were kind of in a bind, and that's exactly what we needed. And it's worked out very well.
Yeah. We've certainly already, like Jason said, we both recommended the organization, but, we talked about so many things that we wouldn't have anticipated. The fit, the ability to flex, how natural everything is. And, I think even the onboarding process, or before the onboarding, we'll call it the recruiting process. In my head, we call part-time CFOs are us, pro CFO, that I envisioned pro CFO would send us Bob or Kathleen or whoever they sent out, and that would be our part-time, CFO, and hopefully it would work out. And if we didn't, we would make a change. And it was not like that at all, and it's really not all that different from a traditional recruiting process, except it was a lot easier and a lot quicker, meaning that we still got to interview candidates, and we could conduct the process however we wanted to select the candidate that we felt was the best fit for our organization and what our needs were. So it was a very, I would say, a comprehensive process like we would have followed if we were hiring someone full time, except ProCFO was there to sort of serve things up more quickly. So that was great. I actually had a funny story about that. After Kathleen came on board with us, I was talking to a friend of mine who also owns a business in the area. And he was explaining to me that he was also working with ProCFO, and he was just bringing on his part-time CFO. And that he lamented because he had someone coming out for an interview the month prior that he was planning on hiring, but he had to put it off because he had too many other demands and he didn't have the time for the interview. And that by the time he rescheduled the interview, his candidate was no longer available because they'd been hired by another firm. And we had a good laugh when he told me that candidate was Kathleen Reynolds. Well, I should say I had a good laugh. I don't know if his loss was our gain.
Well, thanks, you guys. I feel lucky to be part of the team, and I feel very strongly that you have some key differentiators here that will really help bring the company far.
So I have a question for you. From your perspective, why do the fractional CFO thing? Why not settle with a company and work at one place and stay there? Why do you enjoy, or why did you choose, I should say, to jump around, and do the fractional CFO thing?
Yeah, I just to give you a quick synopsis of my background. So I, as you guys know, I started off on Wall Street, and it was pretty demanding and kind of intense. And there came a time where I was like, okay, sliding into the financial crisis, and I have a family at home, and I really want to spend more time with them. And then also I wanted to have this aspect of feeling good about what I did, like that I'm helping in some way. And that's how I wound up meeting actually Nelson from ProCFO Partners, who talked about this fractional CFO model. Joining with ProCFO Partners made a lot of sense because, as you were pointing out, with a group of colleagues, I had folks I could pick up the phone and call and say, hey, do you guys have a recommendation on a good PEO? Hey, do you guys have a recommendation on, a good corporate attorney? To me, it made a lot of sense because it's not only helpful for me, but the client gets the benefit of our collective experience and our collective networks. So it all seems kind of like a win-win. So that was my journey.
I've got a couple things I want to kind of unpack. We were talking about culture, and I'm wondering, in the family business, just kind of starting with you, Jason, is that legacy, do you feel a responsibility to that? You mentioned that this has been going, from when it's sort of the origin story. Is that legacy for you as a leader, as brothers, kind of a weight that you feel responsibility to, or is it more wind that empowers you to think about, to envision, to innovate? It can be difficult in a multi-generational, especially, to feel like you have the reins versus me and everybody who came before me, and I got to haul them with me. Tell me a little bit about that, what that's like for you and for your family dynamic in that way as co-leaders.
Yeah, no, I don't look at it as a weight at all. I think it's pretty cool, actually. I think it's a really cool thing to have. I know a lot of people with family companies and a lot of people who work with their brothers, and it's not always peaches and cream for a lot of them. But right. So our grandfather started the company, and our parents bought him out in 1990. And I got to work with my dad for about 8 years. Keith worked with him for about 4, I think. And unfortunately, he passed away young. He was 55 when he passed away. And so Keith and I were young. Keith was 26. I was 31. And we had this, company with 100 and some odd employees to manage. And it was difficult. And at the time, we had 2 things that really happened that kind of sum up the culture in a certain way. One, we had a group of the executives in the company came together and really helped guide the company while Keith and I kind of got our feet set. And then the other thing that happened is that from a year after our father passed away, for 12 calendar months, not a single person gave notice and left the company. Mm. Everybody kind of rallied around the family and helped the company again get set and succeed. And then Keith and I started putting our mark on the company. We weren't our dad. And some people came along for the ride and some people didn't, and that was okay. But at the beginning, everybody really gathered around to help the family and the company stay together. And so we look at it as, yes, there's a responsibility there, but we look at it as it's our honor, to have this family legacy and this history of culture and entrepreneurialism, if that's a word, mm-hmm. and to be able to carry that on has been really, it's an honor. I think is probably the best word. Keith, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's a guiding light, even to this day. So I don't know if my mother's going to listen to this, but our mother's 78. And, we'll talk to her about, things that are going on in the company because she's still very interested. She grew up with the company and she'll often say, well, how does that fit into the culture? And how does that align with, the culture of the company? Oh. So it's a guiding light. It's a great sort of magnetic force that we have in the company.
Yeah. And after Dad passed away, we knew that a lot of family companies in that type of situation, it's very emotional, right? Keith and I lost our father. friend, our mentor, our boss. And we were fortunate enough to have a family friend who recommended a therapist that specialized in family businesses. And so we spent 2 years working with this person, and really helped Keith and I, again, get our feet set, learn how to communicate, learn how to express what could sometimes be differing opinions from time to time, Keith, is that a way to put it? Without getting all twisted and tied up in the family emotion. And I think that's really served us very, very well over the last, it's been 25 years now. Yeah.
A lot of what you're sharing resonates. That's really interesting to me. And thanks for sharing so much of that. Let me jump back to business for a second. We were talking a little bit about automation. And Keith, do you have a sense for business impact? Like these things have saved us X amount of time is interesting, but energy, like how has it freed up resources inside the organization, or some of the other things that Kathleen has been a part of where you are or your team is thinking differently, acting differently, behaving differently because you have more of this or you have less of that?
Well, we went through a transition in our business model 4 years ago. So we went from being primarily wholesale distributors selling to window and door specialty stores and lumber yards, and we became a window and door specialty store ourselves. So we had a significant change in business model and size of the organization and the products that we carried. And so now we're 4 years in, I guess really, 4 years. We just finished our 4th year in the new model. And so we're still sort of ironing out wrinkles and getting things set up, optimally for how we're going forward. And part of that necessitates being lean and being efficient, and also having more consistency and more accuracy in what we're doing. So I'm not sure how to answer your question. I don't have any specific metrics, but I could tell you it's the automation just in the last year plus that Kathleen's been with us, and the projects we've been able to get done from an automation standpoint have us, doing things much more quickly and accurately. And I would say with a lot less in the way of headaches and stress, and to really focus our resources and our people on where they can add their skills and talents and let the technology do what it does. So there's so many angles, from saving money to improving morale to improving efficiency. It's sort of hit on a whole number of different targets.
Let me bookend the conversation back to culture, Kathleen, and we'll kind of close it out here. You mentioned that you've, with other organizations that you've seen or been around or worked with that have lacked maybe this focus on, I love that your mom is even sort of a check and balance on this. That's amazing. What do you, Kathleen, what's the competitive advantage of the strong culture? It feels good. It gives us something that we can it's a beacon, but it's much more than that. I think the sort of value prop of culture exists. I'm wondering, from your perspective, what's the competitive advantage that Lavitt Group has because of their sort of fine-tuning attention to this?
I think it cuts across a lot of different things. When you have strong culture, and we were talking about the fundamentals earlier, the fundamentals are very specific. So they are literally about how do you handle such things as learn from mistakes. So having, let's just take that one as an example. So having a fundamental around that where, mistake is a mistake. We obviously want to minimize them, right? But learn from it and move on is kind of the message in that particular fundamental. It, in my opinion, it really creates this space for employees and colleagues to feel like, okay, a mistake isn't the end of the world. I'll learn from it. I'll put something in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I'll train others. It gives you that space to not feel like you need to blame somebody if a mistake happens, that it's the end of the world and you can't possibly recover, or it really has wide-ranging impact. And in terms of being a competitive advantage, well, I think if you form that resilience within your team, that it helps across things like, we didn't get this job, we lost this contract. Okay, well, let's do a deep dive, figure out why we lost it, what happened, and move on. And let's take that information and use it next time so we win the next contract. So we, do the next thing better. That's my perception of it, and I feel like it's the company's perception of it in that particular example, that it's that strong that I think it creates that competitive advantage because of how people change the way they work.
I think that's fascinating, and I love that you picked this example. And I don't know all of the other tenants, but yes, when we are unafraid to make mistakes, as you said, we're not looking to, but that is the fuel for innovation. Like literally, we can't get better at a thing unless we stubbed our toe, so that we understand where the efficiencies could exist better, or where we need more strength or support or whatever. And I think that says a lot about your organization, Keith and Jason, and I think it says a lot about your leadership, and I'm really excited for wherever you're headed. I'd love for you all to come back a year from now and be like, that thing we were working on, here's something else that happened, or here's another time when Kathleen wouldn't share her dessert, or whatever. I would really like to keep this conversation alive because I think it's really interesting. Thanks, Keith and Jason, co-CEOs at the Lavitt Group. That is at lavittgroup.com, LAVITT group.com. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Kathleen, you're amazing. Really appreciate your time and your expertise and your sharing and your candor today. We all really enjoyed it.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Visit ProCFOPartners.com for more strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help you put your business's financial picture in context.